Okay, then. Let me check. This is a current status report number 4. We're on January 24th, 2024, where I should have finished by my estimate of the previous current status report of when I will be up to optimistically going to finish my essay, which is still not done yet in the year 2024. Okay, just to show you the progress, I guess. Doing Jack Nelson is, let's see, the screen. Okay, so in total, the Word documents that are involved in the writing of the Final Fantasy Final Thoughts is about, the total word count is about 111,276 words, which is, want to be generous here. I just say a quarter of those words are notes or ideas or instructions to how to make the video, which is also not included in this word count is the actual ideas that are in the various different parts of the video or taking notes on, the books that I've read and stuff like that. So our total word count is around 83,457 words at the minute. Our current accumulation of different files and videos of miscellaneous media sources at the moment is around 238 gigabytes. All right, and that's the current tally so far. Right. So last part of the status report, I was commentating on how I needed to do research on the topics that I was unfamiliar with. And the funny thing about that is that even though I brought out a pile of books, as you can see, that pile of books turned out to be more books because once you read about something, you can't just read about that one thing. You need to thoroughly research it in the end. So that took a really long time. But originally, the reason why the previous status report ended up the way it was is because I was just actually going to study and take notes and actually not going to write anything about it. But as it turns out, one of the obvious revelations that occurred when I was doing research was it was probably immediately better to write about that subject after I have a study / a research done, right? And so in a large part, I was actually working on the End Walker sections a lot in terms of the philosophical stuff that I wanted to talk about. Okay, so, but the irony is that I actually haven't started writing on End Walker yet, which is the funny part. Okay, so so specifically in the previous 2 months, I had attempted to connect cancer history with existentialism, and then after writing it and reviewing it, I have decided to exclude it from the video. I think it's probably for the best in the end, right? Because I know, like sometimes the only way to know that something doesn't work is by doing it, right? And unfortunately, as I will be talking about so many subjects in philosophy, video games, and movies, art, and books and stuff like that, I personally feel like there's just too much technical biological jargon to teach, and I'm not skilled enough to fuse like 3 different topics into one like a cohesive story of like 3 different thematic themes and trying to mix them into this Final Fantasy 14 video essay, right? So ultimately, I've decided to mostly focus on the philosophy. So the good news and bad news is that the bad, in large parts, a bit of a or wasted effort on my part to try it for a third dimension to what I was trying to make. The good news, I'm getting good at doing citations now, right? So one of the biggest parts of the cancer section was trying to find copyright-free media, which is really difficult. And with the addition, since like so much of the material is based on the book, The Emperor of All Maladies, it's like very likely the publisher can take the video down as you can't just tell somebody else's story in the form of a video, as that is like copyright infringement. So in essence, now I have a huge resource pool, or I know how to find copyright free images now, or media now, right? So, and I also understand a lot better the process of how like citations actually work. Like, what is a Creative Commons 0 and what versus a Creative Commons 4.0 versus public domain only in XYZ countries of origins. You actually need to take probably like 2 to 3 days to actually get down like the proper like copyright laws, like especially since there are like specificities for like each different country and their laws and what they allow and stuff like that, right? So that's the positive that came out of working on 2 months in the cancer section, which I'm not going to include, right? Um, so where does it leave us, right? So I also mentioned in the previous status report that I was going to rewrite a section, which I haven't done yet. So it is my hope to work on structuring and rewriting certain sections for the earlier expansions in the next 2 months, because I've already written uh, in large parts what I want to write in those sections, but after coming to the end of it, I felt like I needed to update the previous sections, right? Or maybe we'll just be trapped in an eternal loop of doing this over and over again, but hopefully not. But anyways, in the next 2 months, hopefully that's the main thing I'm going to be working on, which is structuring and rewriting sections for patch 2.0 to Stormblood, basically a Realm Reborn to Stormblood, basically. I'm pretty happy with the Shadowbringer section, right? So, and additionally, as I always like to comment, is like when you're like doing, like, say I'm just doing research or I'm just doing writing or I'm just studying, like each of those tasks makes my brain works in like a very specific way, right? So the work on nonfiction has projected my brain towards a very different style of writing, basically looking up studies, reading statistics, and finding a proof of like scientific data, right? And my goal is to go back writing criticism for fictional works, which is a very different type of research and writing, right? So uh, I am ultimately going to split this video essay into two sections, which is with the first part heavily focusing on the narrative of patch 2.0 to patch 5.5, basically from the sections from A Realm Reborn all the way to the end of the Shadowbringers, right? And the second part of the video, which is the second video, which is going to be focused on philosophy and the talking about patch 6.0, right? Because the first part is mostly just going to be for the people who just want to watch story analysis content from Final Fantasy 14 alone, right? And the second part, because there's so much philosophy in it, it just almost feels like Final Fantasy 14 is sort of like taking a step, which will ultimately include write it as a Final Fantasy 14 part of the analysis. But a huge part of it is philosophical in essence, right? And maybe and a lot of people aren't into that, right? So which is why I decided to do this. Well, anyways, that is the current status report. I won't blather on. So again, I really appreciate it if you drop by during the course of these months, and yeah, hopefully the work continues along smoothly. It is my hope.